Thank you so much for joining us. I know people are going to be rolling in, but we only have an hour, and I want to make sure we get through as much information as possible. So today we're going to be discussing how to make Germany home. So these are all expert strategies for U.S. citizens and their families. We'll just start off with a short disclaimer, just a general takeaway. This is general information and cannot be relied upon for your specific and unique situation. Cross-border tax, immigration, financial planning considerations are all very unique to individual circumstances. So we are just trying to provide you some good general information. Okay, we'll run through our agenda quickly. So we'll do welcome and introductions. Tia is going to be here to talk about some immigration insights. And Emily is here to talk about U.S. tax considerations, and I will bring it together with cross-border perspectives. And we'll all be discussing living in Germany. This is really just meant to be a fun conversation between us. So I hope that you'll enjoy listening in as we discuss everything today. Okay, I will start with the introductions. So like many of you who are joining us today, I'm a US expat as well. I've been personally and professionally exploring cross-border tax and financial issues for over 15 years. I own and operate Connected Financial Planning, which is a fee-only financial planning firm. And we say fee only because we are only compensated directly by our clients and we do not sell products. I've written for Bloomberg Tax and been featured on numerous media outlets, including CNN, Yahoo Finance, and Consumer Affairs. I'm really excited to be with you today and invite you to connect with me on Facebook or LinkedIn. And at the end, I'll also have my Instagram QR code. So I look forward to staying connected with you.
Hi, I'm Emily Haines. My company is Expat Tech Solutions. We're a boutique U.S. tax firm. We specialize in Americans living in Germany. Started that in 2017 and have been, growing quite a bit ever since. And we really try to help our clients sleep better at night, knowing their U.S. taxes are in safe hand and the great complexity of cross-border taxes.
And I am Tia. I'm in Berlin and I've been here almost 20 years. And my specialty is everything to do with immigration and relocation. So I'm the one helping you with the logistics of finding an apartment, finding a school here, and also figuring out work permits. Because, of course, you can't move to Germany without a legally good reason to be here. So that's what I'll be touching on today. And Arielle, I wanted to ask, are we going to record this? Because I know people always ask me afterwards.
Yes, so this is being recorded, and
Okay.
we, like I said, we had a lot of registrations, and so if you are unable to attend, or if you are attending, you'll receive a replay after the webinar. Depending on when my assistant recovers from pneumonia, hopefully that will be in the next 2 days or so. We'll get that out to you.
Cool. Just double checking.
No, great question. Thanks for reminding me to share that. Okay, so I'll let you kick things off with the basics on immigration to Germany.
Yeah, wonderful. Yeah, so as I was saying, I think that the most important thing to wrap your head around is that you have to have a good reason to be in Germany, and just having a lot of money and wanting to live in Germany is not a good enough reason. You're going to have to get a work permit or resident permit of some type to be able to live here. And we'll cover a couple of options for that afterwards. But in general, this is going to be really important for you. Of course, if you're not sure about Germany, you can always come if you're American as a US citizen for up to 90 days as a tourist. You don't need to have a visa or anything like that if you want to come just to check it out, visit a few different cities, see how you like it. But once you're sure that you want to immigrate here, there are two different steps to do. One you can see on the left, that's to get a visa, which is a temporary sticker that you'll get in your passport before you leave your home country. And on the right-hand side, you can see get a residence permit for Germany. And that is going to be your long-term work permit or student permit that allows you to live here for like 1 year or longer. So I want to talk about both steps because even though getting a visa is something that Americans aren't legally required to do, it's sometimes a really good reason. There's sometimes good reasons for you to do it. It could be a good idea, especially if you want to be working in Germany and you have a full-time job offer already before you move. So the way this would work is you find a company that wants to hire you and they offer you a full-time job contract. And then you would take that contract to the German embassy closest to where you live in the US and ask for a visa sticker. They usually take about 4 to 8 weeks to process all the paperwork and grant you the permission to be working in Germany. And then you get this sticker in your passport. That's a visa sticker. People from other countries have to do this before moving to Germany. Americans don't have to do it, but it would allow you to start working right away. You can also skip this step and just move to Germany on a tourist basis and do what you see on the right-hand side, figure out what permit you want and apply for it directly from Germany. But the downside to this is that it can take sometimes 6 to 8 weeks in a good case, but could be, 3 to 6 months or sometimes even longer before you get that work permit in your hands, depending on where you're living at in Germany. So if you already know for sure what kind of work you'll be doing here, we usually recommend even Americans to get a visa sticker, even if you don't have to. It also means that it's more secure when you move here because if you haven't applied, imagine you sell your house, take your kids out of school, pack all your stuff up, move to Germany, and then apply for a work permit. And there is some issue with the process for some reason, your salary isn't high enough or something like that. Then you could really be facing not being able to work and earn money for 6 months or longer, kind of being stuck in Germany trying to get this legal situation sorted out. So getting a visa sticker can avoid that. And like I said, it depends on where you move to in Germany, how long it's going to take you. Right now in Berlin, the average application time once you get to Germany is about 6 to 8 weeks to apply for a residency permit, but it depends on what kind of permit it is. In other cities, for example, Stuttgart and Munich, it's a hot mess and it can take even much longer in those locations right now. In other cities, sometimes it could go even a little quicker. Okay, so of course, you can't actually do either of those things until you know exactly what you're going to be doing here. So, Arielle, if you go to the next slide. I want to talk about a way that is brand new for people to get to Germany. And this is also, again, something you would apply for from the US before you're leaving. So it would be a sticker that goes in your passport before you move. It's called the Chancen card or opportunity card. And this is something that just took effect last year. And it's aimed for people, especially those with university education or other things Germany really wants, like language skills or certain occupations. Enables you to be able to move here for 12 months, even without having any job offer, in order to look for work. And then once you find a job, you would apply for a work permit here in Germany. And the reason this is so cool is that unless you're a software engineer, it can be very, very difficult to find a company that is willing to hire you while you're still located abroad and sponsor a work permit for you and wait 2 to 3 months for you to get a visa and get over to Germany and maybe pay you a relocation bonus. That's all a lot to ask for a company. So we usually don't see this happening unless somebody has, a very high level manager role or is working in an IT field or something that Germany really, really needs. And the opportunity card works on a point system where, depending on your occupation, whether it's considered a shortage occupation in Germany, something that the economy really needs, if you've got a university degree or other professional qualifications, how many years of work experience you have, how old you are, younger is easier, German skills and things like that. You have to get at least 6 different points. Most Americans will be able to get it. And you have to show that you've got enough money to support yourself, which turns out to be like a little over 1,000 euros in 2024. It'll be a little higher now for 2025, but you'll need to show that amount in savings. There's a really cool website called Make It in Germany where you can go on there and do what's called a quick check for the opportunity card if you're curious what your points might look like if you were to apply for that. But again, the really cool thing about this 12 months permission to stay in Germany is that allows you to get over here, which makes it way easier to find a company willing to hire you. you can do a lot more for your job search once you're actually physically here in Germany. Okay, next slide, please. There is also something similar called the 6-month job seeker visa. This could be, for example, if you don't quite have enough savings or if you don't quite have enough points in the point system to qualify for the Chancenkarte. It's only good for half a year. This is something a little older and historical. So the Chancenkarte is actually a lot nicer than the 6-month job seeker visa. But for some reason, if you can't get the other one, this one is also possible as a way to allow you to get here, get your foot in the door and be physically here to start looking for jobs. Okay, next one, please. So probably for most of you, you're going to be looking at trying to find a job or some different sources of income to get a work permit. And the number one thing that we hear that does not work is I have a really good job in the US and they will let me work remotely, or I have a lot of great clients in the US and I just plan to get a work permit in Germany and keep my US clients. Germany does not care about your US based income or your non-German income, at least for the purposes of giving you a work permit. So if you want to get a work permit here, you will either need a full-time job offer from a company or enough German-based clients to apply for a freelancer or self-employed work permit. So that's really important to note. If you're a freelancer or self-employed, once you have the German permit in hand, you're allowed to still keep doing some US clients too, but you can't use them as the basis of applying for a permit. So, there are two kinds of full-time job work permits. Blue card is the best one to have. It sounds really fabulous, like it's going to allow you to work all over Europe. Unfortunately, that isn't the case. It just lets you work in Germany. But it does have a really big advantage of you getting permanent residency really fast after under 2 years of living in Germany. And permanent residency is a great thing to have because it gives you a lot of security that you don't always need to keep your job in order to have a work permit or you'll get kicked out of the country. So it's quite nice. But even if your salary isn't high enough for a blue card, you can still get an employment permit for a regular full-time job. And also, again, if you have a kind of a job like the three of us, advising individual clients, then you're probably thinking more of a freelance or self-employed work permit. And you'll be looking for local clients to write you a letter of support so that you can go apply for a freelance or self-employed work permit. There are some slight differences between the two of them that are important when you start applying for the permit, but it's something that we could advise you one-on-one about. Okay, next slide, please. Maybe
I'm gonna,
you
I'm,
are,
do,
yeah,
do you mind if I share a quick story? So when I moved to
sure.
Berlin, I moved for employment and I was working for a tech startup at the time. And they just wanted to give me a regular employment contract. And I was really lucky because we used some of our relocation funds to hire our own immigration specialist who was like, no, 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 you want a blue card. You are eligible for a blue card. You want a blue card. And if we had not worked with them or someone like you, we wouldn't have known about the differences between a blue card versus like a regular, work permit. So I just want to like highlight that story because that was really powerful for us to be able to get the blue card.
Yeah, it can make a big difference in some cases. It's also a little easier to bring your family over with a blue card, even though for Americans,
Yeah.
we rarely see any difficulty bringing family members over. That's not a thing that happens for Americans.
But what about
Okay.
mixed
Uh-huh.
families? I'm curious. Do you have any
Um,
issues where maybe one a spouse is a U.S. citizen and maybe the other spouse is a third country citizen, not U.S. if they're
if they're a
coming as a family?
resident, if they're a resident of the US, it should not be difficult, but it is a good question. Um, all of this is happening via the German embassy in the US, so you'll be going to the same place to apply for your visas. So, even if your spouse was not born in the US, but they're living with you in the US, I wouldn't anticipate that to be a difficulty. If they're actually living in another country, like living somewhere in South America, they would have to go through the German embassy in the country they're a resident of. And in that case, indeed, it could be a lot harder. Different rules can apply. But if the family is together in the US, it generally isn't an issue. And this is also nice to note. It's a great idea if you can to apply for everyone's work permit at the same time rather than one person come over and then, maybe the family joins 6 months later because doing the application together usually saves you time and money, especially if you work with the immigration professional, but you then can all piggyback on the same appointments. Sometimes, depending on the embassy, families that are booking their own separate appointment, not together with the person that will be working in Germany, have to wait 6 months, 9 months to get an appointment if they aren't applying straight with the family member that will be working here. So we usually recommend everyone apply together if possible. Okay, so maybe you are a lucky person who just has a lot of money and doesn't need to work right away in Germany. And in that case, you might consider also coming over as a student rather than working, especially if you might actually attend university one day in Germany, if this is part of your plan. There are options here as well. And some of them allow you to work part-time. So you can move to Germany as well as a university student. This also, of course, includes masters or other like post bachelor programs that you can do. There are many available now in English in Germany. So in that case, you would apply to the program. You have to be accepted in order to get the permit. You show, student health insurance and savings, things like that, and then you would get a permit this way. There's also one called study preparation that is for people who really want to go to university in Germany, but they can't yet get accepted because maybe you do want to do a German program and your German isn't good enough yet. Or maybe you're lacking a couple of entry requirements to get into a German university. You can do the study prep permit to come here for 2 years. The first year you learn German, do preparation classes in the second year, and apply for university. And then you can go to the university program after that. Both of those permits let you work a little bit on the side, which is really good and important. There's a third one that's the German language student permit, where you come just for a year to learn German, and that one does not allow you to work on the side. So that could be an option for someone who has a lot of savings and just wants to do something different for a year, learn German, see if you like it here. That is also a way that you can stay here. Okay. Cool. I think that's the last slide from me
Yeah, it is.
now. Yeah.
Okay, Emily, you're up to talk about taxes, our
All right.
favorite thing to talk about.
So the US is one of the only countries in the world that taxes by citizenship, not residency. So if you were a citizen of Germany, for example, and you lived in Germany and you were taxable in Germany, and then you moved to the US, then you tell the German tax authorities, I'm not living in Germany anymore. And you would only be taxable on German-based income, so if you had a rental property or something. This is not the case if you're a US citizen. If you're a US citizen, you are always, no matter what you do, taxable on your worldwide income. So that means that when you move out of the country, you're still reporting all of your income to the IRS every year. But you also, once you establish residency, are going to be taxable in Germany on that income. And so there's a couple of ways to avoid paying double taxes. Yeah, so it's important to know whether you need to file a tax return every year. So there's minimum income requirements. They're around, I want to say 15,000. I think that's on. Yeah, thank you.
I'm gonna throw up the minimum income
Thank
filing
you.
thresholds. And so
They
these are
change
for the
every year.
2024. These are for the 2024 year. So it's 2025. So this is the tax return that you're filing now.
Yeah, so if you have income that's over, depending on your filing status, and if you have income over these amounts, and they'll be inflation adjusted, inflation's quite high, so probably a little bit over this, then you have to file a tax return. And what's important to note is if you're married to a non-US person, then you're going to, by default, probably be filing as married filing separately, and that threshold is $5. So you probably need to file a tax return every year. And also, if you have self-employment income, it's $400 is the limit. So almost everyone who's a US citizen is going to be filing a tax return every year. And if you go to the next slide.
And I think I just want to stop here and just say it's generally important to file a tax return, but it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to owe any tax. It's just more about, especially for expats, US expats living in Germany, a lot of times it's just more about the filing obligation rather than like an additional tax obligation.
Yeah. Um, Yeah, so there's a couple ways to avoid paying double taxes. We'll do filing obligations and then circle back to that. So, what's important to know is once you're living abroad, if you were living outside of the US on April 15th, then you get an automatic extension to June 16th this year. It's June 16th because of
Oh,
the weekend.
sorry.
Oh, is it the 15th? It's
I
usually
put
the
the,
15th,
it's generally the 15th unless it falls on a weekend or
right?
holiday. I'll double check that. Thanks.
Um, Uh, so you don't have to do anything at all for that extension. You don't have to file a request. If you owe any taxes, those are due on April 15th, and they accrue interest up until June 15th. There's no late payment penalty until June 15th. So in the year that you're moving abroad, sometimes you're going to pay US taxes on the normally for the time that you lived in the US. And then you'll pay in Germany for once you're getting income in Germany. And that can be kind of a goofy thing. There's a couple different ways to sort of split that. But you might owe extra taxes if you move in the middle of the year. So you can get an extension just like everyone else until October 15th. And that you have to file by that June 15th deadline if you get the extension to June 15th. And then if you're living outside of the US, there's an additional extension you can you can request by sending the IRS a letter and asking nicely if you're living outside to December 15th. So sometimes people don't have the documents they need until December 15th. Yeah.
Do you want to touch on the FBAR a little bit with the FBAR extension?
Yeah. So when you move outside of the US, you usually have a bank account outside of the US to manage your finances. And the IRS has really strict filing requirements, informational filing requirements about your foreign bank accounts. And the first level of that is the FBAR, the Report of Foreign Bank Accounts. And if you have more than $10,000 in bank accounts outside of the US, then you are required to file an FBAR. And this is calculated in a bit of a funny way. So you take the maximum of each individual bank account and then sum those maximums together. And then if that is over $10,000, it's also translated at the year-end exchange rate. So that can be a little, many things can happen at the end of the year. So it can be a little confusing because you could be moving the same money between two bank accounts. So you could have 6,000 euros in one bank account and you could move the entire thing into another bank account. And then the sum of those is going to be 10,000 over 10,000. It's going to be 12,000. So you still have to file the FBAR for every bank account that you own, even though you don't have actually $10,000. And it's an informational filing report that is filed separately to your taxes. And that is due by October 15th. So they use a really confusing wording on how they explain the deadline. They say the FBAR deadline is April 15th with an automatic extension to October 15th, that you don't have to do anything to request the extension. So it's essentially an October 15th deadline. It is important to be on top of that because the late filing penalties and failure to file penalties for the FBAR can be $10,000 up to the total amount on your bank account. And so that's a really important thing to understand and to stay on top of.
And if you're sitting here, because I still meet people like every month who didn't know that they had to file and they didn't know about the FBAR, and these are still like these are new concepts. I mean, the IRS has a lot of amnesty programs available to kind of come into the US tax system. It's not something that our firm does, but that's something that Emily and her firm would do.
We do a lot of catch-up things, and I said late filing penalties. It's actually only a failure to file penalty for the FI. There's no late filing penalty on that one. So if you haven't done it, you can just do it. There's a statute of limitations of 6 years. So if you needed to do it within the past 6 years, you want to get that taken care of. It's not an issue unless they find you first, and then it is a big issue. But as long as you haven't been contacted by the IRS, you can just file late FBARs and come into compliance. And
it's very easy. People do it all the time. So it's really nothing to lose sleep about.
yeah.
All right, should we talk about some of the changes this year?
Yeah, so going back to a couple of ways to avoid paying double taxes on your German income and on your income in Germany, and then paying taxes in the US. The easiest, most straightforward way is to take the foreign earned income exclusion, which is once you've established residency in either you've established your residency in a foreign country, so you've lived there from January 1st to January 31st, or you've spent 330 days in a 12-month period outside of the US, then you qualify for the foreign earned income exclusion, which is you can just, when you report your income, when you file your taxes, you say to the IRS, you know, I made this amount of income, I earned it. So it's salary or self-employment income. I earned this, but I earned it abroad. And therefore I'm not going to pay taxes on it. And so that was increased to 130,000 for 2025. This is also translated at average rates for the year. The IRS hasn't published those yet for 2025, but because the rates got a little bit weird for the dollar got very strong in the last quarter, I think the average rates will be higher. So that'll be a higher amount of euros than normally. So if you're getting paid in euros, then you're going to translate that to US dollars and report it in your US taxes. So that's quite a high amount for this year. Once you're over that, you can still take a credit for German taxes that you've paid. So it's not that if you're over this, then you're automatically paying taxes, double taxes. There's additional ways to avoid that. There's also a foreign housing exclusion, which is if you can exclude a little bit more of your income for your housing costs. So I don't see a lot of cases where this makes sense or is useful. I think there's a small number where it can be really helpful. Usually in Germany, you're paying high enough German taxes on your income that we have a little more room to play around with, versus if you were in maybe a Middle Eastern country with zero taxes, then you'd be a lot more likely to be paying the IRS.
So the thing that always gets me is when you look at the exclusion rate for Berlin, it is so high. It is just so high. I think it's like $70,000 or $80,000 of housing. It's a really high base compared to pretty much any other city in Germany and a lot of cities in Europe. I always find that really interesting. I think it's even higher than like Zurich. So it's kind of interesting how
Yeah, they have a skewed idea.
Yeah,
Us.
negotiation.
I think it's related to the
embassy,
State Department and the embassy, and how people are living
I agree.
Down in Zehlendorf versus how people are living in the rest of the city. Yeah, so some more updates. So the IRS interest rate is 7%. It was at 3% for many, many years, for most of the years that I was working. And then over the past 2 years, it like climbed to 8%. Last year it was 8%, so it's down to 7%. This is if you're going to owe taxes, and a lot of times we're filing extensions and people are actually finishing their taxes in October, November, December, and it's really hard. It's just really hard to predict because the way the foreign tax credits are really kind of difficult to calculate. So it can be hard for us to predict if anyone is going to owe US taxes. And so this is the interest that's being paid on, if you find out when you go to file your taxes in October, if you owed taxes, then it will have accrued 7% interest over that period. So that, yeah, that can really add up at a higher rate at 7% than 3% where it used to be. So it
I think
is,
I put this in as just like a red flag. Like if you had something weird in your financial situation in 2024, bring it up, or if will happen in 2025, bring it up to your financial planner or your tax preparer like sooner than later. Like if you sold a house somewhere, if you had pre 2009 large capital gains, if you had cryptocurrency gains, those types of things, there's a mismatch between where we get foreign tax credits. So it's just I put this in there as a conversation starter.
yeah. So the other thing I think we see, which is a common misconception, is when you're moving into Germany and you're living in Germany, you're taxable in Germany on your worldwide income. So if you have investment income in the US, you have 1099 investment income, you need to be reporting that and paying taxes on it in Germany. And then you can get a credit for it towards your US taxes. And we see a lot where we're kind of working on the assumption that everyone is taxable on their worldwide income in Germany, and so that everyone is paying taxes on their worldwide income in Germany. And so, if that hasn't been reported and it's not in your German tax return and it hasn't been, you haven't paid taxes on it in Germany, then you do owe taxes in the US because you can only get a credit for the German taxes that you owed or paid. And yeah, I think there's a lot of people who just don't know that they should be reporting their investment income in Germany, or German tax advisors who aren't taking the extra step to ask people if they had foreign investment income. And so that's usually the situation where we're finding that people owe taxes and then they owe interest on those taxes. Yeah. So child tax credits, this is a really good one, because you can get refundable child tax credit. So if you have to file your taxes in a specific way. If you take the foreign earned income exclusion, then you're not allowed to get child tax credits. But you can revoke the foreign earned income exclusion and take foreign tax credits instead. Usually in Germany, there's enough taxes to go around. So usually that's that's a perfectly fine situation. So if you can only claim your child as a dependent if they're a US citizen with a social security number. So children born in the US are almost automatically getting a social security number. I don't have children. I'm not familiar with the process. But if they're born in Germany, then you have to like take some steps to apply for a social security number for your child. Once that happens, you can get refundable child tax credit. So that's been raised to 1,700 per child. So there's the first child tax credit of 2,000. So sometimes if there's a little bit of taxes owed to the US, you can kind of cancel this out with the child tax credit, which is really nice. And then you can get refundable up to 1,700. So this is really nice. We really love doing these tax returns because, especially if someone has 2 or 3 children, it's really fun for us to get, 1,700, 3,400. Yeah,
Maybe
and
I
refunds
can
for people.
share that I've lived here almost 20 years in many varieties of self-employment, full-time employment, having a corporation. I always got a refund from the US government because especially after I had a kid, I've never had to pay taxes in the US. So I've had only German-based income, not US income, but I think that's quite nice and kind of weird. I don't really understand why I get a US tax refund every year, but I like it, so that's fine with me. Even when I went over the uh, threshold for filing, the income threshold for filing, my tax advisor told me that as long as I paid more taxes in Germany on my income than in the US, I should never have to pay in the US.
Yeah, that's generally the
Is
case.
that
And
as you understand it as well? Yeah.
yeah,
Mm.
so the situations where we see people paying
Except
less is,
asterisks.
yeah, selling a property in Germany tax free. often comes up. So if you hold a property for a certain amount of time and sell it in Germany, then that gain is tax-free in Germany. It is not tax-free in the US. So that can be a big pitfall. When you own a corporation, sometimes if that corporation isn't paying a high enough tax amount, that can lead to taxes in the US. And then just sometimes the ratio of earned to passive income creates a situation. If you're over at higher levels of income, if you're paying net investment income tax, sometimes you're owing. Those are like the big situations. There's probably some more. One
I
thing that's
wanted
really
to,
nice,
oh,
go
sorry,
ahead.
go ahead.
With the refundable child tax credit, so we do a lot of work for people who are super out of compliance with their US taxes. So they haven't ever filed US taxes or forgot to do, did it for the first 2 years and then got really busy with life and forgot. And there's an amnesty program for people living outside of the US to come into compliance. And with that, a lot of times people call and they're so like worked up and stressed out about this has been hanging over me. I haven't done my taxes for 15, 20 years. And then when we go to do it, if they have children, they'll get, I think the highest was like 28,000 in refunds for like, there's also COVID relief still available for 2021. So yeah, that's really nice. And I like to be the bearer of that news that not only can we get this sorted and get it like cleaned up and on a clean slate, but also, you know, can get many thousands of dollars from the IRS.
What I wanted to add before is just that for everyone considering moving over, um, I've never found another way around it, but you likely will have two tax advisors, one who specializes in American taxes for people living abroad, and then a German tax advisor. So I just wanted to say I think it's really
Mm.
important. You are sort of always in the middle, going between what your US tax advisor tells you have to do, regarding US filing. The German tax system works like quite differently sometimes. So we usually recommend people use someone like Emily, and then also find a like German tax advisor to help you do your German filing.
Yeah, this is a good point. Many people ask, especially many people moving to the US ask or to Germany ask me if we do German taxes, if there's and they want to have someone who does both US and German taxes. And there's
Mm.
maybe one or two people who do it. What I found is that they don't do a very good job because even just keeping up to date with the updates of one country, if you add a second country, it's just too much.
Mm.
And so it's really difficult to be good at both of those. We try to build collaborations and we're working on this more and more. It's definitely a goal for us is to build more collaborations with German tax advisors. There's a lot of times where I don't like having a client have to triangulate the more technical calls, so I'm quite happy to like discuss directly with the German tax advisor, especially if we're talking about how are we applying a treaty. There's no there's no reason for I mean there's just such a lost in translation thing if someone is getting if I'm expecting, a non-tax person to like pass that information back and forth. And yeah, I mean I would love to figure out ways to share more documents and make it a little bit more of a streamlined process. So that's what we're working on. But it is difficult because it's just two completely different systems.
Yeah, great point. And the other frustrating point I found with some dual advisors is sometimes they have no ties to the US. And so there's kind of like they've studied the material, but they don't always understand how, like, what it actually means in practice. And another issue that I found is sometimes they aren't able to e-file. And
Mhm.
the US tax return because they have
Yeah.
no, like, they don't have the registration in the US to
Mhm.
e-file. And then you are literally sending like a 300-page tax return from Germany to the IRS and hoping that the IRS scans every page, it doesn't lose anything. And that is such a pain that I always make sure my clients are asking, like, can they e-file? That is such a critical thing. You should be able to e-file your tax return. So be sure to ask that.
Yeah. And
We are going to
international
go we're
things
going to
are,
go over so much time. I've got so many slides to get through. I'm going to cut you off, but I'm loving this discussion. So we'll just kind of keep circling in. So interrupt me, but I'm going to interrupt you now and work on this a little bit. So again, we talked a little bit already, weighing both those US and German tax implications, like Tia alluded to. They're different, right? Different rules, different tax incentives. How home ownership is incentivized in Germany is very different than how it's incentivized in the US tax code. So understanding those two different implications is really important. Another thing that, Emily, I know you and I see all the time is those German private pension accounts. Oftentimes those can cause a lot of tax issues for people. And, you're moving to Germany, you want to save for your retirement, you want to do it through the German system, but you have to be really careful because not every, especially private pension plan, is going to be recognized in the same way from a US perspective. So because you're stuck with two tax filings, you need to kind of walk the tightrope of like, what am I doing in Germany, and how is that actually going to be reported on the US tax return? Again, German real estate investments, whether you're doing rental real estate, how things are reported, depreciation rules, all those types of things are going to be a little bit different. And so they're just going to cause a different tax liability on the German tax return. And then that's going to have to go, and everything will have to get reported on the US side. So something to be aware of. And then German life insurance products, those can also cause a lot of headaches for US citizens. So again, just be aware. A lot of the stuff we're putting up here is just to ask questions. If you have the opportunity to contribute to a private pension account or purchase a German life insurance product, take the policy document, hand it to your financial advisor, hand it to your tax accountant, your US tax accountant, and say, should I do this? And give them the heads up before you sign the paperwork and you send money, because cleaning it up is always really expensive. So again, there's a lot of, like, I like to say that US citizens, a lot of opportunities for US citizens in Germany, but it's also kind of like we're wearing handcuffs and walking a tightrope. We have to be careful about what we can do. And there's a lot of limitations about what we can do. So for example, if you are opening up a brokerage account, you may find it's really difficult to open up a brokerage account because you are no longer a US resident. You're a German resident, but you're a US citizen. So you may have issues opening up a brokerage account. A lot of people want to invest in US ETFs, which I think are great. And that's what our firm uses, is we use a lot of US ETFs, but they don't provide regulated information to the EU in the same way as German products do. And therefore, if you're a US citizen and you register your brokerage account with an address, you likely will not be able to buy US ETFs. So again, it just kind of creates handcuffs. Lot of FATCA complications. You may go to your local German bank and say, okay, I'm ready to set up a bank account and a brokerage account and, buy all your products. And they may say, oh, you're a US citizen. We are happy to offer you a bank account that you have to pay for with no interest. So it's a completely different system when you're coming in from the US. We don't have free checking accounts like they do in the US. So a lot of times you are paying for banking. Thinking off the top of my head, Tia, feel free to chime in here, of banks that don't, that are free. I think N26, I think, may still be free. I think DKB, these are online banks. Sometimes you can get a free account or low cost account with them.
Yeah. I use DKB and I'm quite happy with them. We also see many banks declining American customers because they don't want to report a lot of stuff to the US tax authorities. And, all of those nice apps that people use to do, ETF investing and stuff, the
Yeah.
German ones don't work. I know I've tried everything, all of these issues I've had. So yeah, it can be quite tricky.
yeah, I'll say one thing about the
Another thing
reporting.
that is just different in general. Oh, Sorry,
No, go
I was just
go
gonna
ahead.
say keep your US bank account open if you can, because you can't get credit cards in the same way in Germany. Credit cards work in a totally different way. So I would hold on to your US bank for banking abilities that you won't be able to get in Germany.
Yep, for tax refunds also, that's the easiest and best way to get your tax refund is to have it direct deposited into a US bank account. Otherwise, they're mailing you a paper check and you're going to take that to your German
Good
bank.
luck.
And yeah, good
Yeah.
luck. Different banks do a different, make that easier or harder. And then with the reporting, so German banks are required to do, they've been required to do 1099 reporting for a few years. They've been rolling it out more and more. Started to see them maybe 2 years ago, saw a lot more last year. They are mostly wrong. They're just, they're just incorrect. They don't have good processes around it. And so, this is tricky because we get clients who say like, "Oh, I get a 1099, it's fine, it'll be easy," and we have to do a lot of work on their German investment accounts to figure out like what their income really was because we can't rely on those 1099s.
Yeah, reporting issues are huge for US citizens because they have to go and then file a US tax return. The PFIC rule, so that's the passive foreign investment companies. So this is really punitive tax treatment around foreign mutual funds. And when I say foreign, I mean anything that's non-US. Um, and so that's where you just want to be really careful. And we see a lot of these issues in those private pension plans. These will often be treated like PFICs. And then again, you have the punitive tax treatment. So any like tax savings that you thought you were going to get is usually just very quickly eaten up with like tax prep fees or additional taxes on the US side. Very quickly, I wanted to provide a very high level overview. You can just use this as reference when you're looking back at the presentation. This is just the Germany, like the US, operates with a progressive tax system, and that's anywhere between 14 to 45%. There's no local or state income taxes in Germany. And a very common question that I receive, and Emily and Tia, I imagine you receive this one as well. Um, you know, when am I going to be subject to paying German taxes? Is it based on a number of days? So it's just important to remember that Germany just really looks at the facts and circumstances of your situation. And that one of aspect is like the time that you do spend in Germany. So if you do spend like 6 months at one time over 2 years, or 6 months during one calendar year, you will 100% be treated as a German tax resident. But you also need to look at, do you have a home in Germany that's available to you? And also, where is your center of vital interest? So if you're just counting days, but you have like a home and maybe your family lives there and you just don't want to pay German taxes, it's just really important to consider, where are you living? If you have, maybe you have multiple residences, so really important to consider, where are you voting? Where's your driver's license? Where are you hanging out the most? Those are all going to be considerations. If you have those technical questions, make sure you're asking your German tax advisor. Another really common question that I'm getting right now is what happens if I become a German citizen? Like this is one of the, and this is all, and Tia, I'm hoping you'll speak to this a little bit because this all goes back to the change that we had last year that went into effect, where now US citizens can actually hold dual citizenship much easier. And so a lot of people who've been in Germany for a long time and they had to consider, okay, do I want to give up my US citizenship to become a German citizen, or do I want to go for an exemption to try to hold dual citizens? The path now is very, very clear for you to be able to hold dual German and US citizenship. And so this goes back a little bit to what Emily was talking about, where Germany is a resident-based tax system. The US is a citizenship-based tax system. So two different types of systems. And so when you are a German resident, regardless of citizenship or not, you need to file an annual tax returns. And that's mandatory if you earn global income. Not everyone has to file a tax return in Germany, but generally, if you're receiving 1099s, you have foreign income because you've got assets still back in the US, oftentimes that's going to trigger a German filing requirement. but becoming a citizen doesn't actually change much, right? It really goes back to, are you a resident of Germany, yes or no? I mean, becoming a German citizen, I would say, opens up like the doors to the rest of Europe. I think that's like, to me, what I think of, do I want to be German or not? Like that's really the opportunity. Tia and Emily, feel free to weigh in on this.
I agree. I got it mainly for my kid so that when
Mhm.
she grows up and wants to study or work in another EU country, she won't have to mess with immigration and work permits because I know how hard it is sometimes. Yeah, and voting. I'm very, very happy and proud to be able to vote in Germany. And I feel like my vote really counts here in some ways, even more strongly than I feel about how much it counts in the US. So that's a big plus for me.
I would say it's something to discuss with a German tax advisor if you're in a position where you might be looking at an inheritance.
Mhm.
Is a big, I think, surprise because the inheritance estate tax situation works completely differently than in the US. We have Arielle and I have another webinar with a German estate tax lawyer in a couple of weeks. So that's probably a better place to get into that deeply than squeeze it in right now. It's quite a big topic.
It's a huge topic. I did put in a slide on this topic because the differences are huge. But again, oftentimes this is going back to residence and not, or asset location, not so much citizenship. But we'll talk about this. I will be sure to link the webinar when we go to the end of to questions. Um, I completely agree. The
Yeah,
whole concept of inheritance tax versus estate tax, they're completely different. They're calculated completely different. Everything about they literally could not be more different. And people say, oh, but there's an estate tax treaty in with the US and Germany. And it's like, well, okay, but yeah, but it doesn't really apply because they're different taxes. So I'm really excited to dig into that with you and some German experts in a couple of weeks.
right. And then I think the citizenship, so because it's residence-based taxation in Germany, the citizenship doesn't have the like hard weight like it does in the US, but it will go into that center of vital interest calculation.
Yep.
So if you're kind of on the fence of like, am I going to be treated as a resident in Germany?
Mhm.
It might be a consideration for the courts if we're getting to that level of looking at a tricky situation.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, this is something that comes up all the time because if you are a US citizen living in Germany, your US based parent passes away, leaves you a couple $1 million, all of a sudden you owe German inheritance tax. And that like blows people's mind. They're like, well, my parents didn't live in Germany. The assets are in Germany. No, but you, the inheritor, are based in Germany. So that's really the consideration. And then you kind of have to do the planning completely differently than how you go about planning your estate in the US, because you really are going back to, okay, if this person's going to inherit and they're a German resident, they're going to pay much higher tax rates on this. What are the planning opportunities? What are the gifting opportunities? It's a really interesting system. I find it fascinating. So I'm looking forward to talking about that with you in a couple of weeks. We will go. I think we're almost through.
Ariel,
Oops.
maybe we should just go to questions.
Um,
I know I had one more slide, but yeah.
okay,
Oh, I can do it really, really fast.
let's do it really fast.
Okay, sorry, I think there's a lag with my internet over here. These are my top tips for moving to Germany. The first one I think is commit, plan, and save all together. It's a really big move. It's not something to do lightly. Things like taxes and immigration are quite complex and take a long time to do the processes. So I definitely recommend, planning at least 12 months out before you want to move. Make sure you have 6 to 12 months of savings for when you do move because a lot of surprises may come up. like putting down a 3 months rent as a deposit on your apartment can really take a lot of resources. So it's definitely something where doing research and asking questions pays off, and talking to a lot of people before you make those decisions. Then when you are ready to move, we recommend in almost every location in Germany to book a short-term furnished apartment or house for the first 3 to 6 months, because this in particular is something very challenging to do in Germany. A lot of Americans think they're going to sell their house in the US and just immediately buy a house in Germany, but it generally doesn't work that way unless you're a millionaire. I think it takes a very long time to find a place, buy a place. So you're going to be looking at renting initially, usually, and having that short-term furnished place the first months just takes time pressure off you to find options once you're here. And finally, I have to say this, learn German as much as you can in the beginning when your motivation is high, because every word you learn is going to help you, maybe even in unexpected ways. Could be that you're working in English and you think you won't likely need it that much, but it will definitely help you smooth over problems. It is something that really pays off if you're going to move here. Yeah, so
I
that's
wanted to expand. I think these are great tips, and I wanted to expand on some of them just from my own experiences in moving to Germany. And Emily, feel free to jump in as well. But if you've never been to Germany, or you just went for vacation, went to Oktoberfest, and you're like, okay, I'm ready to move, try to spend a little bit more time in Germany. You do have 90 days as a US citizen to just show up and enjoy Germany. So go for more than a vacation if you're kind of on the fence about whether you want to move there or not. Um, I also wanted to recommend the State Department Federal Credit Union is one of the only US banks that I'm aware of. And we talked about banks a little bit before. If you're struggling to find a US institution that will work with you because you do have a foreign address, be sure to check them out. And I know we have some resources and links. I'll make sure we add the State Department Federal Credit Union to that, because you can have a German address for that US bank account. So that's one way to still be able to access US banking with your German address. And even if you have millions of dollars, honestly, I don't recommend buying a house until you've lived in Germany for at least a full year and you really understand, like, what neighborhoods do you like and how does it feel? I mean, in our own experience, we moved to Berlin in 2019. The pandemic happened. I mean, I totally thought we were going to be buying a place in Berlin and being there forever. And we were just so burnt out with after the pandemic. We quickly moved down to the Munich area because I just wanted to be near the mountains and the lakes. And so you just don't know, like, being there on vacation or visiting for a job interview and then like actually living day to day, those things can look very different. And having kids doing those transitions, how they adjust to local schools or the international schools, I mean, all those factors can just change things a lot. Here is the resources and links that we love. I know I won't spend too much time on this page because we've got like 1 or 2 minutes left. And then finally, you can connect with Emily and I am on Instagram now, and I'm very excited to be there playing around with short form video. And then Emily runs a YouTube channel with lots of great information. I know we didn't really get to any questions, but Emily, I wanted to give you the opportunity to give your final thoughts on life and moving to Germany, since you've done it a few times.
Yeah, so I lived in Germany for 10 years, and then I had lived there a few times before that. So, yeah, I think one of the biggest keys is being open-minded about cultural differences, particularly as you're dealing with bureaucracy at the front end where there's a lot of things. And yeah, it works in a very specific way. And I think when we're in the US, we develop a lot of strategies to understand how to like escalate a situation if someone isn't being helpful. And those are different strategies when you're in Germany, particularly in Berlin, that has like quite a hard, aggressive culture. And so learning to, yeah, it's just quite harsh growing a thick skin very quickly.
And this is where working with someone like Tia and Expath, this is where it comes in beautiful, because they know the system. And honestly, if you work with someone who knows the system, you're just going to find everything is a little bit more seamless. I know we got apartments because we had had support. We got spots in Kita places, which can be notoriously difficult because we had support. It saves so much time and money and headaches to just kind of take that shortcut if you can do it. You can do it on your own. I won't say you can't, but it is a learning curve.
Yeah, over the years that I lived there, I learned that presenting information to when you show up at your appointments, a big key to success is having documents organized in a very specific way, really greases those wheels a lot, in a way that I think when I first showed up in Germany, I didn't fully understand. And so, yeah, someone like Tia helping you put your documents together and organized in like the correct materials
Oh,
can make a big
great.
difference
Yeah.
in my experience.
Okay, we're at time. I won't keep anyone here later than we need
Yeah.
to be. Again, I will send out the replay in a couple of days. I'll add some of those links, and I will be sure to add the link to our next webinar, which is January 16th. Feel free to register even if you can't attend that time. I think it's Berlin time, 7 p.m., so it's a bit later. We'll send the replay to you if you register. Okay, thanks, guys. Tia, it was wonderful. Emily, thank you so much, and we'll
Thanks.
talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.